Listen, I know those cartel types, and I guarantee you, none of them have even heard of Kirk.
Completely off kilter from what we're used to seeing from CD Projekt Red, Cyberpunk 2077 is a first-person open-world game with several different genres tossed in as well. You won't see the usual magic and sorcery CDPR is known for, but you will find a dense city in a whole new world from the near future. Now, we all know there's a lot of controversy surrounding this game, but was it because of the fact that CDPR stepped out of their comfort zone? Let's find out. In Cyberpunk 2077, you play as V, a street-smart protagonist who gets dragged to hell and back by the local scum and villainy, and is ready to set Night City and those who rule in her ivory towers and moldy streets on fire. But what got V to this point? Well, there are several reasons. To begin with, you'll have to make a choice of what life path V came from by choosing one of three options. You can make V a nomad, which is a drifter who plays by their own rules and lives to survive, or a street kid who's gang-minded, lives by the rules of the street, or a corpo who's a former corporate worker but left that world on bad terms. For V, no option is an easy one, and each come with their own set of pros and cons during the roughly 20+ hour main story. For my first playthrough, I went with Street Kid. Already knowing a lot of the story was to take place in the streets, I had a feeling my street smarts could come in handy. But I have to admit that it didn't sway the story too greatly. I did receive special dialogue options, but nothing that really changed my path forward by any noticeable degree. On my second playthrough, I decided to start as a corpo, and it did show me a few differences at the beginning and the end of the campaign. Of course you can customize the appearance of V, but in all seriousness, you may see your character a total of roughly 3 times outside of the first-person view. This makes customization practically useless, but what initially bothered me were the male and female voices CD Projekt Red cast as V.
Now we know what happened to Clouds. They're the ones who tried to flatline.
Both of which tend to border on generic NPC background voices, the kind you hear in low-budget productions. And it's a kind of a lousy choice when story-related characters and even the true background NPCs in Cyberpunk sound better and more qualified to be the game's protagonist than V.
Looks like Evelyn never told us the whole truth.
Let's get to the real meat on the bone and talk story. The trials and tribulations V encounters are convincingly dependent on your skills at reading people and navigating the jungle of stories that bombard you at every turn. Cyberpunk tells an intricately interwoven, multi-layered main arc that's both detailed and full of alternate paths. But if you go with the standard answers for every dialogue option, you're bound to find yourself knee-deep in a predictable story. Whichever life path you've chosen, V eventually gets caught up in a high-profile murder that he's got to often shoot or smooth-talk his way out of. And this is a really cool way to tell a story because it has you constantly struggling to navigate your way through the city that wants your head. Add to that, Johnny Silverhand, played by the breathtaking Keanu Reeves, is a deceased rocker who's stuck in his own murder mystery, and manages to become a construct in V's head, leading V down an alternate path to seek his own revenge.
Rip the thing out myself.
No, wait!
Like with V's voice talent, Keanu Reeves didn't do Johnny Silverhand's voice justice by any means. The dialogue comes off flat and uninspired, but I blame a lot of this on the writers at CD Projekt Red as well. For some reason, a large portion of dialogue is written in partial sentences. I'm guessing that this was an attempt to make it sound more colloquial. I really don't know, but to me it sounds awful, improper, and badly written, which is a waste for a talent like Keanu Reeves. The deeply branching dialogue really lets you construct a story all your own, which can make Cyberpunk more interesting as you go along. I found myself rifling my way through story paths, figuring out just which one I should be taking in order to maintain a somewhat decent moral with my character. But what I discovered within the first couple hours is that CD Projekt Red threw the typical moral compass out the window. Oddly, moral choices aren't factored in, except for a sad attempt at street credit that was never really utilized correctly.
With him in my sleep.
You can virtually do anything without having to suffer much consequence. See that stack of cash sitting next to that club goer? Just take it. No one's going to even question you stealing it. Now, killing someone in public can trigger the cops to come in or another gang to hunt you down, but it doesn't last for more than a few moments. And that's if they even see you before you escape the scene, which is super simple to do. For the first hour, the game keeps Night City under wraps, amping you up and holding out for the big reveal for when you finally exit your apartment complex. And when you do, it's not much of a spectacle to behold. Surprisingly, Night City is just, well, another video game city. Not enough into the future to look mind-blowing, but not current enough to look too familiar either. It looks alright. Don't expect anything as enticing as San Andreas from GTA 5. Both cities, of course, take place in a caricature of Southern California. I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I was expecting a world beyond belief. A wonderful, jaw-dropping, and grand city as far up in the sky as it was out. But it never really reached that level of expectation, even by the end. There are tall buildings and some cool landscapes to see both inside and outside the city, but nothing that really stuck out and made it feel like, this is it, this is the future open-world games would strive for. Imagine it like the world of Blade Runner, but toned down a few notches. The lights and holographic images are cool at night, but it becomes the same handful of designs repeated throughout the city. The city and its outlying surroundings are vast, with many fun adventures to be had at every turn, with a lot of riffraff to tangle with along the way. As V and Silverhand unfold the mysteries Night City holds, you'll have to learn how to fight like a futuristic mercenary. With no shortage of guns and melee weapons to choose from, there's bound to be a weapon that fits your gameplay style. And if you can't find one, make one in the craft menu. The smart weapons with seeker bullets are fun, and even just using stealth to sneak up behind a bad guy and choke him out is a blast. The game allows you to take on missions in several different ways. I got tired of shooting, so I snuck through a mall with dozens of gangsters just to reach my objective. I didn't receive much experience for doing so, but the accomplishment in itself was nice. Weapons aren't the only fun you'll have either. When you visit the Ripper Docks, you'll gain permanent upgrades that can really change up the game. From implemented weaponry and hacking abilities, there's always something cool to unlock that comes in handy during any given mission. When you unlock the game's skill tree, making your way through missions will grant you attribute and perk points that can be used to unlock further abilities. For example, I love to stealth my way through buildings with minimal conflict, so I placed points into camera hacking so I'd never be spotted. You can also blind enemies with eye implants, take down drones from the sky, or choose several others. However, many of the unlockable abilities just aren't that inspiring or interesting enough to want to unlock. I found myself with close to 20 ability and perk points by the game's end because I totally forgot to spend them after I'd been to the menu a couple times, uninterested with the offerings. There are cool hacks outside of battle as well, moments that allow you to hack into someone's interface to find clues to solve a mystery through their eyes. This plays out like a movie, granting you control of visual playback. Using different sensors in this narrative, you can scan for hidden dialogue, sounds, and objects that will push you toward your next objective in the story. Like a lot of other cool elements throughout the campaign, these are scattered throughout the entire story and only last a few minutes, but it's a nice feature nonetheless. You're granted a vehicle early on to roam Night City, explore at your own pace, and are even given opportunities to buy other nicer styles. But with so many fast travel points, driving outside the mandatory driving moments feels unnecessary. Yes, it's nice to explore the city on foot or by car to see what it has to offer, but like I mentioned above, Night City just looks like a lot of the same in most places. Almost as if the developers got bored of creating the game 2 years in and just copied and pasted the rest. Yes, I've unfortunately reached the part you've all feared. The game's numerous flaws with glitches, bugs, and crashes. I experienced the floating gun with no character shooting at me, and bouncing back 200 feet from a window I was supposed to jump through, and even my shadow detaching from my body, and much more. I can understand if these flaws were in lesser visited locations throughout the game, or the numerous blurry textures were placed on buildings away from the main gathering points, but these moments were literally front and center of each location and mission. Floating objects, identical NPCs, and so much worse were right in the main hub location. I do feel like one of the lucky ones that my game only crashed 3 times throughout my entire experience, but all of these seemingly little things add up and cause the game to feel laborious rather than fun. In the aftermath of Cyberpunk 2077, I feel bad for CD Projekt Red. This isn't the work we're used to seeing from these devs, and I know they wish they could do better. But with the stay-at-home orders and the pressure and crunch their overlords were pressing on them, they lost that spark we've all seen them deliver in games like The Witcher 3. But I have to critique a game by what's been delivered, and Cyberpunk is not the game I wish it was. But it's also not a terrible game either, far from it. I have no doubt Cyberpunk 2077 will eventually be the game CD Projekt Red dreamed of delivering, but also the one we dreamed of receiving. I give Cyberpunk 2077 a 3.5 out of 5. If you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the Age of Z YouTube channel. And stay tuned for more interesting and fun stories on theageofz.com.